Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club.
Yes, indeed. That music only means one thing, and it's time for Elkent's Movie Club. If you couldn't figure that out from the song itself. Kent Wolgamon of the Lincoln Journal-Star has been waiting in the green room for too long a time. We're sorry for being a little late today. Welcome.
Hi, Kent.
Hello. We are going to watch some Rain Man, where we watched.
Well, we watched Rain Man.
We watched some Rain Man, and I had forgotten how much I enjoyed this movie, because it's been a while since I've seen it in its entirety.
Been over a decade for me.
Yeah. We'll get into that here in just a little bit, but I want to get an NBA take out of.
Okay.
Out of Kent. What have you thought so far? I mean, I know your beloved Lakers aren't in, but
Did you watch my Jazz last night?
That's right. You're a Jazz guy now.
I told you guys to watch Utah, that I thought they'd win it all, and I think they're still my pick. They look. They played without, their, I guess you'd say his second best player last night, still won. So, Mitchell has become Donovan Mitchell, Spider-Man is becoming a superstar before your very eyes here. And Rudy Gobert is showing why he won the Defensive Player of the Year 3 years in a row. And I think they win the West, and then East.
Nets.
It was an ugly mess between Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Yeah, but I think that's the only way Milwaukee can beat them, is to make it a game like that. But that thing was ugly.
Yeah, it reminded me, Ken, of a game like from 15 years ago when they often ended in the 80s and sometimes even in the 70s.
Yes, and it was played that way too. All the, physicality and, okay, you're not going to get to drive because I'm going to knock you down.
So that's
completely changed, and that's why I like the Jazz so much, is they really do play contemporary NBA basketball, loading up on the threes, with a guy that can drive to the basket and get his, and then playing really good defense. And I think that's how you get there.
So again, our movie this week is Rain Man, 30 years old already on this one. Actually, it's more than 30 years old.
31 years or 33 years.
Yeah.
88.
1988. I don't know about you guys, but when I watch, and there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's enough pop culture references in there, because obviously the Rain Man character kind of feeds off of those things in some of the idiosyncrasies that he has. Wapner starts in 5 minutes, and all the different stuff. I just like the movie in terms of its time capsule-ness, and hearing back some of the commercials that he was enthralled by, or, seeing how Las Vegas looked 30 years ago versus how it looks today.
I thought that was really cool when they rolled into Vegas.
So that was part of the appeal of seeing this movie again. Not only that it's a great story, but just some of the pop culture references, putting you in that time capsule and taking you back to the late 80s.
And the fashion.
Oh my God. Tom Cruise outfits were horrible in this movie. Horrible. Damn, bad outfits in the 80s. No offense to you guys.
It wasn't that bad.
See, that you like his outfits. Those things were trash. There was one in particular that I was just like, I cannot believe that he's wearing that.
And her hair, the girlfriend.
Oh, man. Looks like my mom back in the day. He had hair like that. Should we set up the movie for the 5 people who haven't seen it? So Tom Cruise finds out he's what is his job? What do we describe him as?
He's a hustler. He's trying to illegally sell Lamborghinis is what he's doing.
Yeah, he's Art Vandelay. He's an importer exporter.
There you go. He's way in debt. He finds out that his dad, who he has been estranged from, don't have a relationship with, his dad passes away. He goes to the funeral. He's read the will, and he has found out that he has left a really cool car, some plants, and nothing else. None of the estate, which is worth north of $3 million. Well, he's trying to figure out who that's going to. Eventually, he goes to he doesn't know where he's going at first. He's just kind of driving up to the building.
He ends up going to an institution where his dad's trustee is working. He is a doctor.
And then he finds out a couple things. A, he had a brother that he had no idea, an older brother, and that B, this brother was in the institution. He has autism, and also that this brother was the one who inherited the $3 million. And Cruise is a scumbag. And so he basically he kidnaps him, takes him away because he's going to try to get that money and, be rich. And then off they go and a relationship is formed. So that's kind of the general synopsis. We started off by talking about the 80s-ness of this and like the sounds and the sights and everything. One of the things, Kent, that I think I was surprised by, given that I haven't watched this in so long, I thought it aged incredibly well in terms of how I guess maybe what it said about those with disabilities. Like when they first rolled up to the institution, I was like, oh boy, what's going to happen? Like Cruise is a jerk and he says words that, we don't say very much anymore, but like he is supposed to be a jerk. I think in the moment when that happened in the movie theater, you were supposed to probably watch that and say, Tom Cruise is being a real bad guy here. It never seemed to be making fun of anybody. And I don't know if I should be surprised by that, but I think I was, 33 years later.
Yeah, and the other thing that made it along that line about the disabilities, that made it makes it work so well, is that Dustin Hoffman plays this absolutely straight, and by that I mean it doesn't give you the expected miracle cure or whatever kind of happy ending.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He plays the guy the same way from the time you see him in that bedroom until he heads back home. That character does not change. Okay. That's an impossible kind of acting in some ways. That's why he won the Best Actor. But it also is what makes this film work in a sense as, it's the first, let's put it this way. It's the first major portrayal of autism in a movie or TV that at least that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
And while there has been some criticism that all of the people that have autism are not savants like
correct
Rain Man. They don't. And I've worked with a couple people that I had an autistic guy on one of my Special Olympics basketball teams, and he definitely was not a savant, but he was very much, had some of the very same characteristics that you saw that Dustin Hoffman brought. So there's a little criticism, but for what it did, it opened that up to the whole society in a way in 88. And it did so with exactly what you're talking about, Josh. Really almost respect, but also it never belittles anybody except, well, I suppose Cruise in the beginning comes off as a jerk because he is. But the movie is his changes because Dustin Hoffman plays it the right way. He can't change.
Right. The couple of things. Number one, this is probably my favorite Tom Cruise movie because Tom Cruise actually plays himself, a sniveling jerk, but he does it very well.
He's very good at that character.
The other thing too is, as I was reading some of the backstory, apparently one of the original ideas was Hoffman was going to play the Cruise character, and Bill Murray was going to play the Rain Man, which and now knowing what we know about Bill Murray and being a serious actor, I think he could have definitely pulled that off. But I think the chemistry and the dynamic of the movie completely changes.
Oh, yes, it does.
If Hoffman has to play this, this jerky, egotistical guy who is trying to, take advantage of someone just to get money. So I thought that was interesting. I have to wonder, Kent, because of how into the character Dustin Hoffman was, and it's so different than any character that he's ever acted before or since. I have to wonder what it was like when the cameras were not running. Was he staying in this mode the whole time?
Like a method actor.
Or could he actually snap back into it? Because he was so convincing.
Yeah.
If you would have never seen a Dustin Hoffman movie prior to Rain Man, you would think that they found an autistic person to play this character. That's at least how I came across. So I've always wondered, how was it like off camera between cuts or during takes where, is he having to stay in this role because he did it so convincingly?
Here's my guess, and my guess is the answer is no on the large gaps, right? Because when you're filming a movie, there's hours, literal hours between scenes, right? They'll shoot a scene and then they'll reset and shoot the next one. It might be 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to stay there. But within a scene, when they're shooting it, I'm sure he stayed. The interesting thing along that line is the screenwriter basically combined a couple things that happened in his life. He had a guy, he basically kidnapped a guy to keep him out of an institution. And I'm not sure how autistic he was, but then he became, he encountered a real autistic guy, a guy who was the guy that he modeled this Rain Man on. Hoffman then sort of copied that guy, and that didn't feel right to him. So he went and copied a couple others. So he put this sort of composite autistic savant together himself. So he created this character, and in doing so, I think would be able to go in and out of it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. Kent, what did you think of, like, for lack of a better term, Tom Cruise's character's like redemption arc in this? Because, as we talked about, he's a pretty big jerk early. And by the end, I came away thinking that his relationship with Raymond, I thought that it was pretty earned by the end, because he had that, what was the line that he had said, that Raymond had said early on, my main man, and he says that late in the movie to Tom Cruise, and it's like, oh, that they crossed a barrier of friendship or whatever you want to say. What did you think of I guess, Tom Cruise's arc in this movie, and whether it was earned or not by the end of it?
Oh, I thought that had it not been the movie, wouldn't have worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had he stayed a jerk the whole time, what's the movie? Had it gone miracle ending, so to speak, that wouldn't have made it work like it did. I think it was because, as I say, I think this movie is as much about that change in Tom Cruise's character as anything else. I think that's the heart of the movie.
Yes.
And in doing so, it was, as you say, earned.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to some measure to the screenwriting, okay? To some measure to the direction, and also to Cruise's performance. And it's interesting to me that Dustin Hoffman, deservedly, I guess, won the Best Actor for this, and Cruise didn't even get nominated.
Yeah, and there were a lot of nominations for this film, from...
And it won a ton of them,
too. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay.
And when you can...
4 of them.
Yeah, and when you consider that this movie, I mean, a large share of it, granted the girlfriend's in it for a little bit, the doctor that cares for Raymond is in it a little bit, but I mean, this movie is really 95% just those two guys together, and with some sporadic interactions with outsiders, but it's those two guys for most of the film. And so to play off of one or the other, I would agree. Again, not the biggest Tom Cruise fan in the world, but he plays off the role really well. I want to ask you though, Kent, going back to the whole exposure to autism, because as you mentioned, one of the criticisms of the film is that maybe it misrepresented what autistic savants are like. You know, most autistic people can't count cards like this, or memorize, all the baseball cards that they have, or memorize the phone book in one night. Was there a concern that it gave off the wrong impression of what autism is, for this being really the first thing of its kind in pop culture that brought autism to light?
My understanding from the people that work with autistic people and autistic families of autistic people is no. There was this. They were almost shocked that there would be a movie about an autistic person back then. Now, if that movie came out today, it would be criticized for what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But because it was the first one, it was the one that actually brought mass attention, wide attention to autism. Before that, I'm not sure I knew what autism was. I'm not, I can't remember exactly what I knew in 1988, but I would pretty well guarantee I didn't know what autism was.
Oh, after the first time I saw it, and I can't remember, it wasn't in the theater, but it was when it first came out on cable. So it would have been probably within a year or two of its release. I still didn't really know. I mean, it was up until here the last, what would you say, 15 to 20 years, where you started to hear more about autism, and I still didn't really understand what autism was, but yeah, in the moment, this was the first chance you really got to see, that this is what is wrong, because unfortunately, Kent, and you'll remember this, we pretty much had a word for it.
Yeah.
A catch-all word for people who were, born with these types of disabilities.
Yeah.
And it was just all couched in that one, that one
Well, and
segment.
Cruz says it very early in
Yes.
the movie. He asked the question, "Oh, is he this?" And he goes, "No, that's not what he is."
Right. But I mean, it was just a catch-all phrase, and we didn't really sub-segment it into, well, no, this is what the problem is here, and this is what the problem is here.
And that's absolutely correct. And if they did this again today, what I suspect they would have to do is, in some fashion, bring in some other autistic characters so you could sort of see the spectrum, the span, and then I think it would not be criticized, right? If for example they spent more time in the institution, that first institution, and you saw 10 or 15 of the other people that lived there and how they were, it would probably blunt most of that criticism, let's put it that way. And I still think they say, what is it, 1 in 10, something like that, autistic people have some of these savant-like characteristics. So it's still representative of at least some people.
Right.
Totally off this conversation, but one of the bigger smiles that I had, and you're going to make fun of me for this one, John, is when they're rolling the credits early and it's like, composed by Hans Zimmer. And I was like, Hans Zimmer? Because he does all the Christopher Nolan movies. He did all the Dark Knight. I was like, Hans Zimmer? And sure enough, he was nominated for an Oscar for this.
I would admit I saw that too, and I said I would not have, because it's got a common theme throughout.
Yeah,
and I would not have guessed that was a Hans Zimmer composition.
You need more.
Yeah, exactly. This was a very gentle, very
80s,
very 80s soundtrack. But I would not have guessed it was a Hans.
And I would guess it was one of his first ones.
Probably was.
But this thing came rolling in with a pretty good pedigree of who was behind it. This was Goober and Peters, who ran MGM UA for a while. So they put it together. There were at I know Spielberg at one time was associated with this film and didn't do it. But Barry Levinson did it, and this kind of made his career. He's a very good director. You got 2 A-list stars, so it was and so Hans Zimmer kind of fits in there in the sense of he was and remains a top-end composer, whatever you want to call it, score writer.
Yeah.
And this thing, the other interesting thing about this movie from a production standpoint is it was filmed in the middle of a writer's strike.
Interesting.
And so you couldn't make any changes. The writers couldn't make any changes. They couldn't work. They delivered the last scene apparently like hours before the strike began. Wow. And so any of the changes that were made in the script and all of that were generally just kind of improv.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive. And it ended up paying off because it's one of the few films that both is Academy Award winning and was the highest grossing film of its year. Rain Man was the highest grossing film of 1988, and that was in a year where you had Roger Rabbit, which was another film club entry.
Mm-hmm.
You had another Rambo film. You had the second Crocodile Dundee. You had Coming to America. Die Hard. Die Hard was only 10th. Rain Man almost tripled it in terms of worldwide gross.
Yeah, and a movie like this today would not lead the box office at all.
No
explosions, no superheroes, and yet it beat a bunch of heavyweights.
And it did over 300 million worldwide.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would be translated to $2020, but I bet it'd be up there with, your big movies of today.
Josh is looking up the calculator right now.
That would be $682 million today.
That would put it in the top 10 for a
That's
year.
Crazy.
Yeah.
For a quiet movie. A character movie.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that is Rain Man. I'm curious, Josh, how did it age? Because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of dated pop culture references. Eventually, Rain Man gets a portable TV. There's no DVR, so when it's time for Wapner at 4 o'clock, he has to watch Wapner at 4 o'clock.
Well, for me,
no cell phones.
Whenever the question of aging comes up, I always think of it more in the context of like societal things, less so the technology, because I can always put myself in technology. I thought it, like I said at the top, I thought it aged really well. It does not poke fun at those with disabilities. And I think that that's the most important thing. Because I honestly, after I picked it last week, I was like, I wonder if I made the right choice. Because I was like, I didn't want to watch it and feel uncomfortable. And I thought when I felt uncomfortable, it was because we were supposed to feel uncomfortable, not because this was made in the 80s and they, they couldn't foresee something. I thought I still think it's a great movie.
It is.
Dustin Hoffman, that's one of the best performances I've ever seen. It really is.
The weirdest thing to me about it, Cruise was 26 and Dustin Hoffman was 50.
Wow.
Dustin Hoffman's over 80 years old now?
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Oh, my God.
Man.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, The Graduate was what, 1968?
68?
Yeah, so I guess I shouldn't
be.
That's
a movie I haven't watched in a long time.
But I was like, wow, okay. That's pretty impressive. So there it is. That's Rain Man. It is still streaming on Netflix. Highly recommend it. It's a great film. And even though it is R-rated and, again, maybe a sign of the times, there's really not a lot of real racy material in here. I think it would qualify today as a good family film, wouldn't you?
Other than the F-bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is Cruise in those first 15, 20 minutes of the movie?
Yeah.
Must let loose with about 10 F-bombs. And that's what got it the R. And after that, I think you're right. And if you would see a edited version, a bleeped version,
wouldn't be a whole lot different.
Change the movie at all.
It'd probably be PG-13 today.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure it would be. Well, if it came out today and they ran it through and they said, you're getting an R because it's got 7 F-bombs. They just go in and cut 3 of them out, or however many they'd have to cut out.
Yeah.
So they could get that.
Yep.
All right. So next week I'm off.
Oh crap!
Because I've got College World Series.
I bet you don't have a movie picked out then, do you?
I didn't. It just dawned on me. I said, wait a minute, I'm not here next week.
All right. Well, you know what? This movie literally just came up. Let me see if it's streaming. And because I literally just said
you can pick one of your artsy crappy ones if you want.
Oh man. Can't have you saw what's the last Daniel Day-Lewis movie? Where he works in fashion. What's that movie called?
Oh, yeah. I've just gone brain dead.
Last Daniel Day-Lewis movie.
Lincoln the Haberdasher?
Not Lincoln. It is Phantom Thread. Is that a good movie? No? Okay.
Not great.
Well, okay. I just saw I literally just mentioned it. The Graduate is on HBO Max. I haven't watched that movie since high school. Let's just do another Dustin Hoffman movie.
Well, and that'll be fun because that is a classic and it is of its era.
Yeah. I remember not liking it in high school. So I want it, but I was also 17 or 18. I was a moron.
We'll go back in time. It'll be The Graduate next week.
The Graduate
on Kent's movie.
I have a fun story.
Robinson.
And they came up on the show this week. Simon and Garfunkel did.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, so there you go. Perfect.
That's right.
All right, The Graduate.
Kent Wolgamon of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Kent, thanks again. And we will talk, Josh and who's on? Jimmy next week?
Yep, Jimmy.
Josh and Jimmy will talk to you next week, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Sounds good.
Later, Kent.
There he is, Kent Wolgamon of the Lincoln Journal-Star.
And then we'll get your pick for the week after that.
Well, the week after
2
that,
weeks
it'll be 2 weeks after that because
the week after that, it'll be College World Series stuff.
Yes.
So we'll take a couple weeks off.
I'll come out